right. Hello. Welcome to the Artificially Intelligent Podcast. My name is Nathan. I am a white, cracker-ass, hunky American comedian living in Iowa. Beneath me, ooh, that's a racial comment, is Barrett Antar Goodwin, Black African-American person of color musician in Philadelphia. And then to my side is everyone's favorite atheist, Andrew Hall. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
You should tell that to my mom.
Does she not? Are you not even her favorite atheist?
I don't know. I haven't had a proper sit down with her about the whole atheism thing. I think she's agreed not to really pay that much attention to the atheism.
Fair enough. So the reason I asked you here is because I not that I am second guessing it, but maybe should have asked a Christian, because I wanted to discuss religious hypocrisy today. And you were the first person I thought of. I had asked you if you had seen a documentary. You said no. I believe I asked you. Is that the case? So really quickly, the documentary LuLaRoe is on Amazon. I do not recommend it. I think they made the documentary about 5 years too early, because it's compelling. And then you get to the last episode and they say, and the company's still going and some people aren't happy and there are a couple lawsuits. It's like, okay, maybe wait till the lawsuits are finished and the company's either finished or stronger, or you just sort of like, you made the documentary too early. That's what I did not like about it. The reason I wanted to talk about it, not the documentary, is because the company was founded by a couple hardcore Mormons. And this isn't known right away, but as the company becomes, I don't want to get sued, allegedly a pyramid scheme, because that's literally what it is, you go to work for the company and then you hire people to work under you. And when they order a ton of product, then you get a bonus, but then nobody can sell the product. I'm not even going to, the long and the short of it is, this couple is fascinating in that they take on a real sort of tone that is, well, we deserve everything we get because we're right by God. And if you fail in your sales, it's because you aren't. And I found that fascinating because I got completely fucked over and lied to by a Mormon company that looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and told me one thing, then strung me along for a year, and then in an email almost a year later said, yeah, you did something wrong, we blame you. And I emailed them back and said, you do realize that night you shook my hand, looked me in the eye between sets and said, for the second set, do everything you did the first set, everything was perfect. You didn't tell me to change, you didn't tell me I was doing it. So and their attitude when they sent me the email saying it was your fault, they said, look, you know the guidelines, we're a Mormon company and we love Jesus, or our, and I just found it fascinating. So I guess I've bumped up against that several times in my life, where it's the whole Porky's too, where they say we can't have Shakespeare in our high school, but we're going to watch porno films in the basement of the courthouse, wherever they got recorded by Pee Wee and the gang. It's just a reoccurring theme that as long as you say you believe in God, you can do no wrong. That's where I'll open the floor to anybody with a thought.
Wow. Well, you have just talked, you've opened up a lot to talk about. You've talked about the potential corrupting nature of the profit motive, and that possibly that these people went into the business. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that these people went into the business with an open heart, but somehow there are so many perverse incentives when you're looking to make profit.
Wait, not to interrupt you. Let's go sideways. Let's just talk about Porky's too the entire time. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I mean, if you're given an incentive to act quote unquote poorly, to act badly, to act immorally, then most people, most of the time, will act in that way, regardless of their professed belief system.
But do you think that there is something that happens inherently because of, what did you call it? The profit-driven something or other?
The profit motive. Yeah.
Profit motive?
Money makes everything okay.
Oh, you meant profit. You meant profit as in that way, not profit as in
Exactly. I see what you did there. I like that.
Okay.
That was good. Yes,
I guess what
profit.
I was getting at is not just what you said, people will act unethically, but I tend to believe that in certain cases they think it's okay to act unethically because it reminds me of a documentary or a special I saw in Yemen where they interviewed the Saudis, the Yemeni government, and the Yemeni rebels. And at one point, all three sides, while being interviewed, said, "It's okay, we're going to win because we have God on our side." And I'm like, well, there are three different sides, and you all so that's what it made me think of is the idea that hey, we built this $1 billion company because we have God on our side. If you can't sell our stuff that we made you buy in order to be a member, then it's your fault. It's not just acting unethically, it's that it's okay because they're not unethical. They're doing it to people that are less than. And that's the feeling I got when I got fucked over is it's okay to fuck me over. I'm not Mormon. I don't believe in your Jesus. So I can be cast aside regardless of what you did that was wrong and unethical and dickish.
There is something to be said that religion probably evolved as a concept, as an idea, as a way of keeping people within an in-group. It's a form of tribalism, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there are toxic aspects of that in today's world, in which it's difficult to accept the humanity of other people who are outside of your group, especially if you're a fundamentalist. That people within the group you can have a certain respect for and compassion for, but once you go outside of that group, it becomes difficult. It becomes a problem.
But what do you do? You know, this is something that has come up in the past handful of days in conversation, right? What do you do without the power of mythology to teach morals in a way like and let me figure out what my real question is here. I feel like there's like an innate need for us to have some kind of thing to worship. I don't know if it's just innate or if it's just because it was how morality was taught for so many years that it's just been something that we've done. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like, do wolves innately howl at the moon? You know what I mean? Do we innately have that need?
You're
But
asking if
what
it's Pavlovian in a way?
right, but also like I understand what the point of it was in the beginning, right? Because we did need to be taught morality because we are pretty fucked up as creatures. Like we're pretty bad. Like left to our own devices, we are not necessarily good. So we do need something that holds us in place. And for years, that was something like religion. You know what I mean? And nowadays things are different because there's not an overarching God concept in America these days in the way that there was 100 years ago. Things are very different. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
sometimes for the better, we could say, but some for the worse. Other people would argue.
I would say a couple of things about human nature, if I'm going to do a broad brush, is that
Mm-hmm.
our nature is molded by our environment. So when we have a nasty, brutish, and short environment, like the average lifespan might be 20 years, a few thousand years ago, where people died, where women died in childbirth, when we didn't understand the world, then yeah, that creates a nasty personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a safer society, that creates a more of a compassionate individual, and you can see that with our simian relatives, when these groups of chimpanzees don't have to worry about food or shelter, they're actually quite nicer to each other. There's a famous example of Knuckles the chimpanzee, who was a chimpanzee with a disability, and he lived in a enclosure with other chimpanzees. All their food was taken care of, their shelter was taken care of, their water was taken care of, and the other chimps treated Knuckles compassionately. Would they have treated him compassionately in the wild where they had to worry about food, shelter, other
Yeah.
dangers? Probably not. But I don't think we're that far. I don't think we're that different.
I mean,
it made me think of one thing I didn't want to interrupt. When you talked about religion being used to create tribalism, I mean, when you have a populace thousands of years ago of just nomads, and you kind of want to unite them and create a government and maybe get taxes. I don't remember where I read this, but it said that there are basically two kinds of gods. When you create a religion, you create either a punishing God that says, hey, if you fuck up, this is what's going to happen. Or you create a compassionate God that says, if you are loving, then you will be rewarded. And I found that interesting. And it speaks to different aspects of any religion, what side of the religion, you can find both in Christianity, the idea that, the kingdom of heaven, or you're going to go to hell. I just found that interesting when I read it is all.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that many of the religions start off one way and end up another way. Like they start off with the, Jesus.
I was getting a lot of static. Yeah.
They call he's the Prince of Peace. That's his nickname, and they've killed more people.
There's your statics back.
I know. I don't know what to do about it other than hold on. Give me 1 second. You talk amongst yourselves.
Well, going off what you were just saying, the Book of Mormon I thought was fantastic in that. Have you seen it?
I've seen it.
Yeah, and I thought that was a very realistic depiction of any religion where, to spoiler alert to anybody that hasn't seen it yet, you should, but Mormon missionaries go to Africa to spread the Book of Mormon. And what is discovered is that it's not really applicable to people living in Africa. So one of the missionaries just tweaks it a little to try and get people to stop doing horrible things, but uses references that they can understand in that area. And at the end, they've created a new religion, an offshoot of Mormonism, the Book of, who's the character? I forget.
I forget too.
But so at the end of the Book of Mormon, they have created an offshoot of Mormonism, one that applies to Africa and makes more sense for that region. And going off what Barrett was saying, I think that's how religions generally work, is they do start in one area, and it can go either way. It can go, in that sense, it was exposing how it changes for the good and for the better. But it can also be changed for the worse and the more evil.
Sociologists call it, historians call it syncretism. And syncretism is basically...
I thought that was a Police song.
I know what you're saying there. I love that. I love the number 1 and number 2. But syncretism is when you have, like you're saying, religions evolve and they borrow from each other. Cultures collide. And typically you get a crossing over of different ideas and even different deities and different aspects of deities from one culture to another. If you look at your Old Testament, there are passages where where the authors are talking about there isn't just one God, but there are multiple gods, and that goes back to a time when the Jewish people were polytheistic. That isn't a typo in there. It's if you go back into your Old Testament far enough back, you will see God being amongst a council of gods.
I mean,
and that got edited out around King James or before, or how far back do you go?
Well, that, once again, it's still in there. You can still, it is still in the Old Testament, maybe in Genesis, about the creation. There is, and this isn't me just saying this. This is scholarly, this is scholarly consensus that the Jewish people were once polytheistic, and their ancient texts reflected this kind of merger from polytheism towards monotheism that we see today.
See, which I always find interesting, that I've always said that I never knew that. I honestly never knew that. I made it this far in life without learning that. And I have long said that, they've edited the Bible in the past. The King James version, that's the one that the most popular. So who's to prevent it from happening again? I've never understood why no one could just stand up and go, all right, it's 2021. the Bible's good and all, but let's say that gay marriage isn't such a bad thing. Let's make it more modern. Because it's been edited in the past. It's just so long ago that now we're holding on to this dumb version as and holding it up on high.
Well, there's definitely, as society has gotten kinder, than the translations of the Bible, or what we take from the Bible have gotten to be kinder too. It isn't because of religion, it's because of society, secular forces within society, making society better. And then people looking at the book going, well, Jesus obviously didn't say that, or God doesn't mean that. He means this other thing over here. So yeah, the text may not change, but definitely how people perceive the text does.
Now, what's your major opposition to religion, just in general, like from a standpoint of one, how would you teach morality and things like that to large numbers of people without it, and why wouldn't you use religion, I guess, is the other question.
I would say that my main problem, or this is a problem, and many smarter people have said this than me, is that any system where you rely on and look towards the afterlife and treat this life as just the opening act for the rest of existence, that creates certain problems.
Yeah. To interrupt quick, I hear that used a lot when people today talk about climate change, and it's you get the headache right back here where you're like, please
Nathan
please
and
don't.
I just did the same thing. We did the same thing.
Just
Exactly. So climate change is a classic example of this, is that people are thinking, well, it's really the afterlife that we should be talking about.
Right.
We should be focused on. And whatever we do in this life, it's just mere shadows of what's to come. That creates problems. Yeah. And I would say that we teach morality just by, looking at basic human compassion, because compassion, one of the greatest lies that we've been told is that religion caused morality, that religion created morality, and it didn't. Religion hijacked our concept of morality, but morality pre-existed before faith ever did. Once again, getting back to Knuckles, the chimpanzee, those chimps don't believe in Jesus or Allah or any Hindu deity. They have these instinctual drives to be compassionate to each other, and so do we. We're not that far away from our simian relatives in terms of having this moral instinct.
Well, this is something we talked about, Barrett, you might remember, I don't, last week, 2 weeks ago, recently, where, again, I read shit and I never remember where I get it from, but I know I've read it, that in times of tragedy or upheaval, humans tend to treat each other better and unite to fight I remember when this is the example we used a couple of weeks ago, the great East Coast blackout. Everybody's like, oh shit, is New York going to fall into chaos? And they're like, no, people just chilled out and like, hey, are you doing okay? Let's check on our neighbors. Katrina, anytime there's a hurricane, the fires in California. So you're right. They don't say, oh shit, God must want me to be good to my neighbor, so he set California on fire. People just try, like the California fires, Alyssa Milano and James Woods were being nice to one another at one point, which was insane.
We were talking about it because in my naivete, I thought that COVID would bring the nation.
Oh, right. Yep.
I thought it would be a mass problem that could bring us together. And, I had a different thought today. Again, we're not going to go down this road, but somebody was talking about the whole race thing and how that was really about to really, really be a powder keg, and then the COVID thing came. And it was a nice way to shift everybody's focus away from that into this other thing that could keep us equally as divided, but somehow not bring down the nation somehow. I don't know. It seemed a little far fetched to me. Not like that it was done on purpose, but you know, but it
Well,
did. But there was an interesting shift from like this, like we just shifted from one divisive thing to another divisive thing, you
kind
know?
of, but the Floyd race shit really hit the wall at the beginning of COVID in the middle. So it was
Yeah.
already there. In fact, Floyd upended the COVID panic.
I mean, but what I mean is like in terms of us having something to be divisive over with all the
Oh,
vaccines and all the stuff. I mean,
gotcha.
like we seem to have a again, really loud here today.
Didn't
Um,
nothing came through.
okay. When we talk about religion having some kind of innate thing, this idea of tribalism and in and out groups, but the groups being basically two choices, right? Like I don't know that that's innate or if that's learned behavior, but it seems like all these things seem to work well with each other, right? Like this need for worship, this need to look to something higher than ourselves really allows for certain kinds of leaders to come into power. If that's not, I don't know if, again, I don't know if that's if that's a conditioned need or a congenital need. You know what I mean?
Well,
I
I don't
let me go
know.
sideways with everything you're saying, and I don't want to go down this
Hmm.
path, but it popped into my head because of what you said. Do you think that COVID could have united us pre-Trump? Because he was a very large driving factor in the deunification, if that's a word, the separation of society. I mean, we were on that path, but he was the hand grenade that still is. They just released the Daily Show released a Jordan Klemper visits Iowa for Trump's last rally, and the people are just fucking insanely stupid.
um, can I feel this one? Can I feel this
Yeah,
question?
it's to both of you. You think COVID could have united us pre Trump's insanity asshole nature? You know,
It certainly wouldn't be I'm going to say the most straightforward and probably the most trite thing in the world. Gosh, it wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't for Trump around. That being said, yeah, Trump has been, or the society that helped um, uplift Trump and Trumpism to heights, to political heights. Um, it's been brewing in this country for decades.
mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, Trump is the logical extension of what has been going on for decades before that. And yeah, he just threw gasoline on the fire.
But do you think, as a nation, we would have united behind,
No,
to fight the pandemic? No.
no. You look at other countries, and there is whether you're talking about, and I'm talking about countries with good public health systems, and it may not have been as divisive as ours, but you look at Australia, you look at especially Western countries in where individualism is highly ranked in Western Europe, Australia. There's been this kind of divisiveness that you haven't seen in other countries that are like in Japan, for example. I haven't heard of any riots in Japan or any major issues in Japan
That's
about.
because they were wearing masks already. I've been to Japan. I've been to Korea. I've been. They
That's
get sick. They put on a mask to prevent other people from getting sick, like we are supposed to. I mean, that's part of their tradition and culture is
right.
look out for your peers.
Yeah,
Whereas here, it's me, 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 me.
it's a lot more me. Well, not enough for me, by the way. I just want to say that to everybody. Not enough for me.
Yeah.
Did you guys check out Fantasyland by Kurt Anderson, the book?
No.
Okay, it's a great book. He breaks down. I mean, I think you'll particularly like it as an atheist, and that can be either of you, I suppose. Can I? um, he talks about how when we first got here, one of the things we came here for is religious freedom and so forth and so on, but the kind of freedoms that were exercised in religion were kind of wild, and because it was right after, it was like, the printing press was around,
Mhm.
they had Martin Luther, there was a whole Reformation, Everybody could read and decide what the Bible meant on their own. They didn't need an interpreter. And then the most gullible people came to this country because that's who came here, was the most gullible people, because they're the people who believe
Well,
this
that
creature
explains a
made of
fucking lot.
gold. And no, but I mean that's what it was. It was
Yeah.
like shrewd investors
Hmm.
sending over really gullible people. And the
Yeah.
first lots of them died by the herds, you know what I mean? And the people that survived were the strong and hardiest of the naive and easily swayed by promises of gold, right?
Yeah.
Those were the people who survived with their religions. They kept on modifying every time somebody didn't like something in somebody else's. They interpreted the words a different way. And then that went on for years, creating this weird kind of fantasy. And then Hollywood came and doubled down on all these fantasies. And it just like he breaks it down much more like elaborately than that, obviously, but he really talks about what was happening before, then during the beginning, and through the real formation of this country, and how it just bred a certain kind of belief in the supernatural, the completely ridiculous. And he cites things like in the 80s when there was a real satanic panic where people were really
Oh,
legitimately
I remember that.
afraid
Yeah.
of that,
Right.
like that Satan was, you know what I mean? And like we talk about it, like we're having this conversation now in 2021 for all the people in the future who are looking at us. What up? Hold up,
You and your gang
3059,
signs. They're going to be
right?
afraid now.
Exactly. In 3059, they'll be like, oh my God, that's so archaic. Right. But he talks about all these things and about how we just kind of lost our way and lost our mind. And I wonder if we could do a some kind of psychological and not only philosophical, but philosophical and moral examination of how other places formed
Mhm.
and what they looked like in their first 500 years. You know what I mean? Because I think that they kind of look like us, like a lot of fighting, a lot of stupidity, a lot of religious, like bickering back and forth. Like it seemed like a lot of young nations went through this. And we feel like because we have technology on our side, that somehow we shouldn't have to go through what every other baby nation went through. But we're kind of just children in that way. I mean, what do you guys, I mean, again, just a theory.
Well,
But what do you think about this?
went somewhere, a museum, probably the Museum of Natural History. I went to one of the big Chicago museums and watched a short take on China from inception to today. And again, complete ignorant dummy here. Always just thought, oh yeah, China's China, but it's everything you just said. It was pockets of little tribes, and then one tribe decided to take over other tribes and expand. And so there was always expansion and contraction, expansion until it became the China we know as today. But it was very violent, and it was China in a way, and this is I probably inappropriate, but not kind of like Afghanistan, how they say Afghanistan is not a real country. It's a series of tribal areas that no central government can rule. Well, China did it right. They had the same thing. They had a bunch of tribes, and they just somewhat like the Taliban has taken over Afghanistan now. It was, yeah. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I bet I would imagine that's the way many nations started, with a bunch of infighting, and one side took over and said, now we're doing things my way.
What's interesting is that when the Pilgrims came over, the Pilgrims were Puritans. They were, as you would expect by the name Puritans, they were kind of religious fanatics.
Yeah.
They got rebranded as Pilgrims to make them a little bit more user-friendly for the kids. I had a history teacher in high school who said that the Pilgrims came over here for religious freedom, for themselves, not for anybody else.
That sounds about right. Yes.
And there's this religious fervor that bubbles up in really toxic ways in the Salem witch trials, in the Satanic Panic, in QAnon today. There is a straight line from the Salem witch trials to QAnon today.
And what's funny is we look at the Salem witch trials. We look at the we were so naive back then. It's a good thing we've learned. We haven't learned shit. We are still, on Twitter, cancel culture is the same thing in a way as the Salem witch trials, except instead of just burning women at the stake, we're just fucking outright canceling people and trying to destroy their careers. And
I just want to say this, brother, and I say this with love and compassion, is that if we had Twitter back in the Salem witch trials, those ministers who were hanging women would be complaining about cancel culture.
Yes.
They'd be like, those people who don't want us hanging folk, they're the ones trying to cancel us.
Yep. Well, that's what it is today with the Republican Party canceling everybody, but then complaining about it when it happens to them.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a certain amount of responsibility you have to take for your own actions.
Yeah. You know me. I feel like all this stuff is just like, it's what Malcolm said, chickens coming home to roost. This is what happens when, again, with the fantasy and all the ridiculousness, if you have a whole country based on this kind of foolishness and these kinds of hierarchies and this kind of attitude, and if you are in power, what power means is that you're allowed to do this, and this, and you can make up words, and you can decide who's better and who's worse, and you can decide who gets publicly hung up and who doesn't, and then you teach that shit to your children. And you teach that over and over, and then somehow they go, well, how about we decide we're going to have the separation not be this skin color thing, but be this other thing that we've decided that's equally as arbitrary, but we're going to make it up now, and we're going to say what it is, and everybody's got to listen because we have the hammer, right? And it's like, right, that's what happens. It's like,
well, there's definitely an intergenerational issue going on with cancel cultures. There's a bunch of speaking as an old white guy, right? There's a bunch of dudes who look like me who happen to be comedians. No one here, not picking on Nathan at all, but who do complain about cancel culture. And you got to say, at least this is what I say to myself. It's like, well, maybe it's just because you're not reading the room right, or you're not really tuned into the zeitgeist.
I disagree because I don't take it as oh boy, I'm an old white male, they're coming for me next. It's fucking strafing the room. I mean, it's friendly fire. They take down women. Look at Chappelle's latest special where he talks about how the instant someone that knew him that was trans liked him, the trans community turned on one of their own and basically caused a suicide. It's
I would be careful about getting a biased source of this information as being
you mean like the trans woman's family who basically agrees with Chappelle? That's not biased. That's pretty intimate.
I would also caution the fact that Dave Chappelle says he's not anti-trans because he had one trans friend.
I don't think he is, but
I think that and at the very least, I don't know what's in Dave Chappelle's heart, but I say that's shitty reasoning right there.
He was just using one story. I would say he's not anti-trans because he doesn't say anti-trans things. I
would say that as soon as someone says I can't be X because I have a friend who is X.
He didn't say that though. He just told
that. Yeah, that was his message. That was his message implicitly in that story. Is that look at me? I have a trans friend.
No, so I disagree completely.
And he's being disingenuous when he says I don't even know what hitting down is. He is disregarding that when we all know he knows what hitting down is.
I think he defined hitting down, punching down, and
he said, "I don't know what does that mean anyway," and just goes on with it.
Well, then he answered it.
Well, the thing is that he whisks it away, says he doesn't know what it is, and says basically offers the argument that hey, I can't be anti-trans because I have a trans friend.
I don't think we watched the same special.
Yeah, we could actually show the entire. We could look through it frame by frame, and
you guys are funny. I think that the point, it's interesting because I would be curious to get you guys' take on cancel culture because I feel like cancel culture is, from my perspective, my personal perspective, right? I don't know that I represent any groups here in this conversation. I feel like it's honestly And Nathan and I have talked about this before, and he's called me a hammer. And if I'm a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But I honestly feel like cancel culture is just an outgrowth of white supremacy. You know, like it is what happens when you teach your kids that they can do all this crazy stuff. Then they just go on to do this thing, and it becomes this crazy thing. And I'm not saying black people don't take part in it. I'm not saying black people don't have a heavy hand in it, right? But it is a way that like it's just going to be the new version of some kind of supremacy is who gets to do it. I don't know. I think that cancel culture might have started off as a reasonable thing. I think it's completely unreasonable now. And I think it's going to get worse and worse and worse before it gets better. I think it's going to get to the point where it gets as bad as when we talk about racism and talk about it at its height being horrible. I think the cancel culture has the potential to get not that far, but to go close enough to that place that I'm far too uncomfortable with it.
There's no.
Well,
I just want to say that I'm a big fan of Bo Burnham, right? I loved his latest special, and I liked his work beforehand.
Who?
Bo Burnham. If you haven't seen Inside, then you should definitely take a look at it. It's a beautiful piece of work. And before he made Inside, he was asked about cancel culture, and he just said, there are these really young people trying to make their way through the world, and is cancel culture any worse than what was before it in terms of the racism, the misogyny, the arbitrary hierarchies? Absolutely. And I'm just rephrasing what Bo Burnham said. So so is cancel culture worse than that? No. Are there mistakes being made? Sure there are. But is it worse than that other thing? Absolutely not. So yeah.
Is it better?
It's a sign of improvement. That's what it is. It's a sign of schlepping forward. And development doesn't go in a straight line. And like Bo Burnham said, there's going to be mistakes made along the way, but it's better than being stagnant. And
all right,
I have hope that Barrett's wrong, that it's going to get worse before it gets better, because I was just going to say that the other day I heard clips of it. I didn't hear the entire interview, but over the past couple of weeks, not only Chappelle, but now Jon Stewart and Bill Maher are all starting to speak out against it. And it's like, you're getting some pretty heavy hitters that are.
I'm sorry, they're not all white guys, but there are old people who aren't in touch with the zeitgeist and going, things are changing, we don't understand it. So
the zeitgeist can be wrong, though.
And now I'm going to yell at the clouds like Grandpa Simpson, basically.
I think it's but they're not yelling. It's the angry youth.
It's a symbol. It's a hyperbolic thing, to make a point.
But if the point is wrong, like the zeitgeist can be wrong. Like according to the zeitgeist, Britney Spears is a better musician than Miles Davis because she sold more albums and is more widely known because she's more popular. It's what more people are talking about. Doesn't make it right. It's just.
I mean, comedians who are supposed to be able to read the room suddenly can't read the room anymore, or they can read the room and they don't like what it is. And so now they're complaining about it.
I might say that the people read the room and don't like what they see. I might be willing to I'm not willing to, but I do think I'll push back a little bit here, because I do think that progress in any real way is always made by the ability to question things and the ability over time to reach some kind of group consensus that doesn't involve a sledgehammer, right? Like if everybody is standing behind you with a hammer about to whack you on the knuckles if you don't answer correctly, that's not a group consensus. That's forced will. And I don't know that any society really moves forward in any kind of way that is long lasting structurally, that if force is the method that you use to maintain people's belief and not just it actually meeting itself out as accurate throughout their daily lives over and over and over again as being the deciding factor for what happens versus somebody forcing something to be what happens. Again, there's holes in that because I'm making it up as I go along. So there's holes.
Pretty good for making it up.
That's all anyone
You know
is.
what I mean?
I think that cancel culture, and I know that Nathan and I have had discussions about this before. The nation is basically at a turning point. It's morphing into one thing from another thing. It's
Yes,
becoming
absolutely.
it's becoming more like Western Europe than Arkansas, and Arkansas doesn't like that. And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
and the thing is that we can only be one thing or the other thing, and we're seeing this play out in our politics and in society. And I think this conversation about cancel culture is a reflection of that. Is that the country is going to be either all of it's going to be like Arkansas, basically, or all of it's going to be more like Denmark in another 50 years or so, or another 20 years or so. And even within our lifetime, we've seen dramatic improvements towards the culture moving towards something more like Denmark, something more secular, something with more stronger societal institutions. And the right doesn't like that. And so we're getting this last, and I'm hoping that Trump.
That's politics, though, because I would disagree, because I'm not on the right at all. And I know a lot of the left that doesn't like cancel culture. And we've moved way too far away from religion, because that's where this all started.
The original cancel culture.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's the right wing who complains the most about cancel culture. And it's evangelical Christians who complain the most about cancel culture, because they know that they are now being held to task for the crazy things that they're doing, and they don't like it. And it's also part of this whataboutism. It's a part of this, well, we're going to deflect from what we're doing wrong and say it's your fault, you leftists, you people who are doing cancel culture. So the more that you're talking about what's wrong with the left, we're going to do whatever we want to do over here on the right.
All right. See, I'm inclined to agree with you in a sense that people are being held to task for what they have done, right? This is the Malcolm thing. The chickens are coming home to roost. That's what that is. I would separate that from cancel culture in huge ways, because I think that when we have a situation where some woman loses her job because she uses a bad word, whatever that word may be, she offends someone, she hurts someone's feeling, she says something that maybe is wrong and you're not supposed to say.
Are you talking about the ESPN woman?
I'm talking about anybody.
Oh.
Sure, she's a perfect example, though. She's a great example.
I mean, this is a black woman that got canceled. So it's not an old white man. This is a black woman that got canceled.
So tell me about the story, because I don't know the story.
She's biracial, and when asked what she checks on a census or something like that, she said, I don't know, or something to the effect. Basically, the long and short is what she said was, well, President Obama, someone said President Obama checks black and he's biracial. And she said, well, that's cool. That's up to him. That's his business. But that is interesting, considering he was raised by his white mother and grandmother and didn't really have that kind of relationship with his father. Yeah. Now,
and that blew up a shitstorm.
But this is because when we talk about the concept of, again, we also like, we not just have to do a thing where we're in a buzzer every time it comes up. But if you're going to use slave masters rules, then one drop of black blood makes you black. Mm-hmm. If you're using slave masters rules, but if you decide you're not using the masters rules anymore, then if you have a parent of one race and a parent of another race, you are biracial, and you shouldn't be forced to choose because other people are intellectually lazy. Do you know what I mean? Right. And for her to lose her job because she said something, not even in malice. She wasn't even.
Yeah, I heard the direct, I didn't read the quote. Right, there's a big difference between reading the quote and hearing her say it.
Like she said it, and it wasn't in any way.
No, it was just I find it interesting that he does that. I choose to choose this. I choose other. It wasn't
And
you can read it with a tone. If you're reading it and are like, I don't understand why he does that. It's like, no, it wasn't anything like that. No, but that's what when I talk about cancel culture, I go back to the original. I'm talking Justine Sacco, I believe her name was. The very first time I remember hearing about it, where she wrote that tweet, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. And by the time she got off the plane, she'd lost her job. Her name would run through the mud.
I remember.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
And it wasn't even that apparent. I mean, she tweeted it to her 35 friends. She had a private account. And then someone screenshot it and said, this person just tweeted this. So it wasn't like she was even making a public, I'm tweeting this to the world. She tweeted it to 35 people. and still lost her job and everything. And this is going back, fuck, 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a learning curve with new technology. And you know, everything on the internet is what we're doing here is public, obviously.
Yeah, but nobody watches it.
Until one of us gets famous, and then it all
I
goes
mean,
crap.
I mean, and I won't forget you guys when I get famous. I mean,
Right.
no, but,
right.
No, but like one of the things that I will say that you do have a point when you say about reading the room a certain way. You have a point, because the things that I would say that would get me canceled are actually things that younger people would not say. Right? Like they would, like a younger person wouldn't have made that joke, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. They wouldn't make that joke. Not that way, like a young millennial, a liberal
maybe it
millennial,
depends.
they
I
would- they
saw kids
probably
at the
wouldn't make
library,
it,
like
you know?
kids under 10 or 11 years old. And this is going to get me canceled right here. But my kids are 7 and 9, and this was a couple of years ago. But these were kids. These were young kids in the kids section of the library, and there were 4 or 5 of them sitting around. And one of them was just saying, like, dude, you so fucking stupid, you're retarded. And I'm just like, there we go. There's that word, keeping it alive, making sure that it's okay and not like everyone clutches their pearls and has to cry and be sensitive. I'm like, good for the youth of America. I have hope. I don't say it anymore because I know I'll get canceled. I'll fucking get whatever. But it was nice to hear kids using it. I got happy.
I mean, I wonder, because
I feel the same way when I see some kids smoking too, Nathan. So, much love. And you can say "fuck you, Andy Hall."
I mean, I do think that I don't have a TV addiction, but I have a weird thing with TV because I didn't grow up watching a lot of TV. So when I see TV, it's kind of like, oh my God, look, they're moving. That's amazing. Right? Like it kind of brainwashes me, like I get hypnotized by it. And I watch a lot of really dumb shows, but I have noticed that there is a fair amount of victimization where like they're teaching people so and so said that, like everyone's talking about how hard it is for them to have gotten where they got, and how they couldn't, how there are all these forces that were working to keep them down, and they could, if only they could do this, if so and so would do this, and blah blah blah, and I'm like, God, that is not okay, because that's not the whole story. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that people are not victimized, have not been victimized, have not had horrible things happen to them, have not had any of those things. I'm not arguing that or any of that stuff. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't have an effect on people's lives and things like that. What I will say, though, is that I know that there were times in my life, so just speaking as an individual, where I would say things like, yeah, I would do that, but as a Black person, they won't let me. Right? Now, who is this they? Right? And the reality is that it wasn't they who were stopping me. That doesn't mean that there wasn't a they, that when I started to step out of line, quote unquote, that there were not forces that came down and said, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? But none of those forces actually stopped me. They just said, hey, what are you doing? And if that wasn't enough to stop me, then I kind of just kept on walking. Yeah. And I'm not saying that there weren't people who did mean things and things like that, but this whole idea that there is this mythical they that has this mythical gun pointed at my head at all times, stopping me from doing things, is not actually true. And you know what I mean? And I was very much taught to believe that.
Are we talking about religion now? Because I feel like having a gun in your head,
right?
Keeping you under control. That sounds like
yeah.
I
mean, the first thing you make me think of is the exact opposite. If you, and I don't know the story by heart, but I've heard enough of it. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, a guy who barely spoke English, had an unpronounceable last name, said, I'm going to be the biggest action star in America, and fucking did it because of willpower, not what you're saying. Like if he had gone, man, my name, I can't change it, I can't speak, I should. I mean, the victimization culture. It's an interesting
Right.
parallel to cancel culture, which is I can't get mine, so fuck you. I'm going to take yours away. And I think that is my big problem with it.
Yeah.
Is that that we're heading down a path of boat where everybody
Now,
path of boat where there's a target on everyone's back, and you get to blame everyone for your own failings.
and here, but the ultimate thing, again, if we're gonna talk about it in this context, is that when people started to rise up and say, I'm not going to think this way, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to be different, where I'm going to do things like that, that's when the rise of this whole Trumpism thing started to happen because of, like, we can argue about whether or not, oh, there's a black president, blah, 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 and he did this to the country. But I think that what happened when you have a black president and you have black beauty queens and his Latin X this, right? And gay
Here,
this.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? I
Mhm.
mean, it's basically just Newton. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes, there you
Literally,
go.
Trump was the
Right,
snapback. It was the rubber band. It was,
right,
oh, we
absolutely.
tried to go this far, and nope, it's the
Right,
Godfather 3. Every time America tries to do something, fucking bro pulls him right back, and Trump was the pullback.
yeah,
I,
and you know,
I, I'll also say that Trump is a gas, or it's a power grab by certain segments within our population to grab onto power in a non-democratic way, because that group, primarily white evangelical Christians, they have a certain amount of power in our society, especially within the Republican Party. And they know that their time, when you look at the demographics in this country, they're becoming smaller and smaller. And so I have this theory, and I think it's true, that Trump and Trumpism is like the final gasp. They're going to go for it all. And if they can't grab it all, then they understand on some level that they're just going to become just another group. They're just going to become another society, another
yeah.
demographic.
All right. See, and this is where I'm going to caution you guys, because me and my people, we've
Bass
dealt with
players.
them. We've dealt with them before, and they're not as friendly as you think they are. Right? I'm just telling you. Like, it's like the joke that, like, when Trump got elected, white people were all shocked, and black people were like, yeah, we're not surprised. I
Well,
was
that
a
was
little
again to
surprised,
bring it back. It
but
was the Chappelle Chris Rock sketch on
right,
Saturday Night Live.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a great sketch. That was a great
And
sketch.
then that was remarkably accurate.
Yeah.
That was pretty accurate. I was a little surprised. I kind of did think that we are gonna have that, you know, like Hail Mary somehow pull it out of the last minute. But I've seen one too many movies,
Yeah.
So,
I thought
so
Hillary was going to win in a squeaker, just a tiny squeaker.
yeah,
I'm like,
that's kind of what I
everybody
thought
thought it
too.
was going to be a blowout. And I'm like, no, this is going to be really close. And
Yeah. But I think that, like, this place, like, I'm trying to find new ways to say the same things over and over and over again. You know, um, I think this place has real problems, but I think that when this place goes, these are the very people. Like, if we're gonna date ourselves, go back to Lady Hawk days. If I can't have her, no one can. Like, they're not gonna give
but
it
that
up
was Michelle
easily.
Pfeiffer. And come on. I mean, you want to hold on to Michelle Pfeiffer. Still today.
But you know what I mean? Like, I think they're gonna, this is their last gasp. This is they're holding on to this, right? But they're also the from my cold dead hands people,
Oh yeah.
right? That's who they are. They're those people, and they're not gonna give it up easily. And there's a lot more of them than you think. Like, I have friends who are conservatives who say things to me like, well, when it comes down and I have to choose between this and that, what am I supposed to do? As if they're being forced to become white supremacists. You know what I mean? Like, as if they have no choice. But if I said, so when it comes down to it and I have no choice but to go join the Black Revolutionary Army, they're going to act like I, of course, have lots of choices and I could not do that. But in their case, they have no choice but to do this other thing. And I think that there are a lot of people who, I'm not saying there's a lot of racist people in this country, because whatever, what do I know? I've been surprised. I've been in some of the quote unquote places where the most racist people are supposed to be, and they've been very, very nice to me. You know what I mean? I'm an individual, and I'm not near their. I'm not trying to bang their daughters. You know what I mean? So
Really?
but okay, maybe I am, but not.
What their attitudes
Well,
change towards you if you
it's
were
not
trying
that
to bang their daughters?
it's not that you're trying to
I mean,
bang
that's
them,
the
but
question.
you're open to it if they were to approach you.
But you know what I mean? Like I'm not a threat. I'm sitting on stage, I'm playing music, I'm being funny, I'm like, and I'm only passing through town, and I'm one of the only people of color in the room, probably. So there's no way in which I pose any kind of threat to anybody that is real. There might be some imaginary threats, but there's no real threat that I would pose to anybody, really, right? And so, but I have found people to be quite nice. Some of the backwoods, you know, teeth look like their tongue is in jail, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, here's an interesting question. All right.
I don't think I've ever heard that one before. I enjoyed that very much. I like that. Teeth look like your tongue is in jail. That paints a goddamn picture. Thank you for that one.
anytime, growing up black. This is what we did. We made fun of each other using jokes like that. That's
Today
all
you'd
day,
get
every
canceled
day.
for it.
Oh my goodness, in a second. But like
I think
I've
that.
met
Oh,
many of them.
where else did I hear it? This has nothing to do with anything because youth of today being, hopefully not to. It was a "Your mama so fat Thanos had to snap twice." I saw that on Twitter. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. That is just beautiful. Oh, I like that. Well, if there's any hope for the future as we approach our time limit and maybe go a little over it, last week I saw that this was a story, and I went, "Huh, that's interesting." And where I say, "Huh, that's interesting," other people actually say, "All right, well, let's look at the statistics on that." 9% of Georgian Republicans in Georgia will consider not voting in 2022 or 2024 because Trump has been walking around saying, hey, if they don't fix the voter fraud that happened in 2020, just don't vote. What's the point? And these people are so dumb that they might listen to him and not vote. And if there is any hope for the future, it's these dumb fucks not voting.
I'll pray to my fictitious God that's the fact.
I mean, I saw that, and I'm just, like I said, last week I saw Trump is saying, what's the point of voting? And this week, Georgia Republicans are saying, what's the point? I'm like, please keep on that messaging. Trump, if you do anything in your rallies, keep pushing home the point that there's no point to vote. All right, Andrew.
I mean, wait, is he definitely running again?
He hasn't announced, but he really likes the fundraising aspect. Who knows if he'll run? He just loves fundraising. So, I mean, if he can do that without running, I'm sure he would, because that's what he's been doing is saying, hey, give me money to pay my lawyers to fight the election fraud. And it literally says 10% of donations go to the lawyers and 90% I get to keep and do whatever I want and pay for my golf courses. And, it's in the fine print. But yeah, all the reporters have uncovered it and said he raked in like $100 million between November and January 6th or some absurd amount. And he got to fucking keep it all because he puts it right in there. This goes to me, and I get to spend it how I want.
And they trust him.
Well, because he puts this is for my legal defense. Not really. It's the Apple agreement terms where you just like click, okay, I'm giving money to Trump. You don't read it, you just click it. All right, Andrew, tell people where to find you.
I have a YouTube channel, Laughing in Disbelief. I also have a humble blog on Patheos Non-Religious, which I do satire, and that is also Laughing in Disbelief. And am I going to write about Dave Chappelle and Bill Cosby doing a comedy tour together tomorrow? I probably will. I think that'll be something.
Wait, what is
it's satire? He's trying to equate Chappelle's words with Cosby's rape.
Oh, oh shit, that's hilarious. Would that be?
That is hilarious.
No, see, it's hilarious, but what's funnier, reality is always funnier than satire.
Oh, I know.
Because when R. Kelly was found guilty, the first person to speak out on his behalf was Bill Cosby. You can't write that. It's so funny. Bill Cosby, another black man being railroaded. And it's like, really, that's your take. That is your hot take, is that R. Kelly, who chained up girls in his basement and peed on them, is being railroaded. All right, fair enough.
I have a saying that Texas is stranger than fiction. Because as soon as I think something's crazy, Texas just blows me out of the water.
More so than Florida?
Oh, well, you got Greg Abbott in Texas. You have DeSantis. Yeah. They go back and forth.
Barrett, promote yourself. I always promote you every week, and I love doing it, but promote yourself.
Oh, boy. Katie Henry, new record coming out January. Video
21st.
Yes. First video is going to drop in December. Second one's going to drop in January. Tour is going to start in January after the record release. KatieHenryMusic.com or Katie Henry Music on all the socials. AntarGoodwin.com.
I'll promote you again next week. So
yeah. And Antar.Goodwin on all the socials. I'm easy to find. There's very few Antar Goodwins in the world.
Yeah, I've not often, but someone told me to once. I Googled me, and you Google John Smith, and they're all over the place. You Google Nathan Timmel, hey, it's this guy. So yeah, you Google Antar Goodwin, you are easy to find.
There's very few of us.
I am at Nathan. Yep, I am at NathanTimmel.com. The book is We Are 100. I do not have a new review for you this week. Every week I've been posting a new review. I don't have a new one this week, but people like it. So you can look at all the old reviews on Amazon when you decide whether or not to purchase it. If you're sitting there going, weare100.com, what's that? Look it up on Amazon, check out some of the reviews, and you might go, all right, I'll buy it.
If you believe in Santa God and you have a holiday coming up, it's a perfect gift.
You both have read it. Andrew put a nice review on there. You put a nice. Andrew was one of the first. Andrew had me on his show to talk about it. He liked it so much, which was very kind of him. So, all right, kids, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for what do the kids do? The millennials, hey, click that subscribe button, smash that share button, get the word out there.
Smash that button.